It was a day like any other. The sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the streets. I had just finished a long day of work and was ready to unwind as usual. My name is Ethan Matthews. I'm just a regular guy. At least, I thought I was. I had a steady job, a house, and a wife, Emily. We'd been married for 3 years, and I thought we had everything figured out. But like many people, I was wrong. I had no idea that the woman I trusted most would betray me in a way I could never have imagined. It wasn't a slow burn. It wasn't a gradual breakdown. No, it was swift, deliberate, and devastating. I came home that evening to find a stack of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. Bills. Junk. And then one envelope caught my eye. It was from the bank. At first, I didn't think much of it. We had a joint account after all. But when I opened it, my heart sank. There was a loan application with my name on it, but I didn't recognize the signature. It was my name all right, but the signature was wrong. A little too neat, a little too precise. Someone had forged my name, and it wasn't just any loan. It was a massive one, enough to put our house and everything I had worked for at risk. I felt my hands go cold. This wasn't just some mistake. This was deliberate. And my first thought was, how could Emily do this to me? But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part came when I went to the bank the next day to figure out what happened. The loan wasn't just approved, it was already dispersed. Emily had taken out money. Big money. She had used my name, my trust, to rob me, to rob our future. I tried to hold it together, tried to stay calm. But inside, everything was unraveling. I couldn't comprehend how the woman I had trusted most, the woman I had given my life to, could betray me in such a cold, calculated way. I felt like a fool. But I was no fool. I was just too trusting. This was only the beginning. The beginning of a journey I wasn't prepared for. A journey that would turn my world upside down. I had to get to the bottom of it. I had to find out everything. Because one thing was certain, Emily had a plan. But what she didn't know was that I was going to make her regret every decision she had made. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the forged loan application, trying to make sense of it all. How could Emily, the woman I'd shared my world with, betray me like this? I had to know more. I had to find out what else she was hiding. I decided to start with the bank. I spent hours on the phone, trying to get any information I could about the loan, the transactions, and the people involved. The more I dug, the more questions piled up. The loan had been approved so quickly, almost too quickly. And there were transfers from our joint account, large amounts of money that had been moved to an unknown account. But why? What was Emily doing with all this? It took some convincing, but I finally got the name of the account the money had been transferred to. And that's when everything began to fall apart. The account didn't belong to Emily. It wasn't even a family account. It belonged to someone named Paul Walters. I had never heard of him. My heart sank. Who was Paul Walters? Why had Emily opened an account in his name, and what was their connection? I had to find out. So I did the only thing I could think of. I hired a private investigator. His name was Jack, and he was a quiet, methodical guy who didn't ask questions. He got to work immediately, and it didn't take long for him to track down Paul Walters. Turns out he was someone from Emily's past, someone she had been involved with long before we even met. The more I learned, the worse it got. Emily had been seeing Paul again. Not only had she forged my name to secure the loan, but she had been funneling the money to him. They had been planning something, and I had been too blind to see it. For months, she had been working behind my back, making deals and covering her tracks. And the money? It wasn't for us, for our future. It was for her and Paul to escape with. I was furious. But I wasn't going to let anger cloud my judgment. I needed to think clearly, to plan my next steps carefully. I had to make sure that when I confronted Emily, I had everything in place, every piece of evidence, every fact. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. Not this time. I reached out to Jack, who had managed to get access to more of Emily's communications. Emails, texts, even phone records, they all pointed to one thing. Emily and Paul were planning to disappear, leaving me with nothing but debt. She was going to run, taking all of our savings, the house, everything. And that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to just let this happen. I wasn't going to sit back and watch as everything I worked for was taken from me. Emily had stolen from me, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had a plan to take everything back. And this time, Emily was going to regret ever crossing me. I had everything I needed. Every piece of evidence, every document, every conversation recorded. Emily had thought she could escape unnoticed, but I had been gathering the pieces quietly, methodically. The plan was set. Now it was time for the confrontation. It had been a few days since I'd discovered the full extent of Emily's betrayal. I hadn't spoken to her since. It was hard to even look at her. How could I? She had stolen everything, our life, our trust, and my future. Yet I knew I had to face her. I had to look her in the eye and make her understand that there were consequences for what she had done. I called her that morning. The phone rang once. Twice. Then she answered. "Ethan, I didn't expect to hear from you," she said, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. I paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady. "About everything." There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to sound innocent, but I could tell she was on edge. "Don't pretend like you don't know," I replied. "I know everything, Emily. The loans, the transfers, Paul Walters. You can't hide from this anymore." There was a long pause before she spoke again, and when she did, her voice cracked. "I didn't mean for it to get this far, Ethan. I didn't want to hurt you." I couldn't help but laugh, though it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was bitter. "Hurt me? You've already done that. You took everything I worked for. You used me. You forged my name. And now you want me to feel sorry for you." She didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. Then finally she said, "I was scared. I didn't think you'd understand. I thought I could fix everything, but I was just too overwhelmed." Her words were full of excuses, but I wasn't buying them. The Emily I knew wouldn't have done this. This was a stranger standing in front of me now, and I was done listening to the lies. "I don't care about your excuses," I said, my voice cold, calculated. "What matters now is the truth. You can't run anymore, Emily. You can't hide behind Paul or anyone else. I'm taking everything back. And you're going to regret ever thinking you could destroy me." There was a tremor in her voice when she spoke again. "Ethan, please. Don't do this. I'll lose everything." "Good," I said flatly. "You'll lose everything. Just like you tried to take everything from me." The conversation ended shortly after that, but the weight of it settled in. She knew I wasn't bluffing. And now it was time to act. I reached out to my lawyer, David, and told him I was ready to move forward. We filed a restraining order that day, freezing the remaining assets, ensuring that she couldn't make any more moves to steal from me. I had already contacted the bank to initiate legal action. Emily would have to answer for everything, and this time I was the one calling the shots. For the next few days, I stayed focused on the plan. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't interested in dragging this out for drama. I just wanted my life back. I wanted to take back what was mine, and I wanted Emily to know the cost of betraying me. The day came when I got a message from her lawyer. I agreed to the meeting. It was time to end this once and for all. The meeting with Emily's lawyer was set for the following week, and as the day approached, I could feel the tension building. I was prepared. I had all the evidence, every document, and a plan that would ensure Emily couldn't escape the consequences of what she had done. But as I sat there, waiting for the meeting to start, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a legal battle. This was about power, control, and making sure she would never hurt me again. When Emily and her lawyer walked into the conference room, I could see the look of surprise in her eyes. She wasn't expecting this. She wasn't expecting me to have everything in order, to be so calm and collected. I noticed the way she glanced around nervously, avoiding my gaze. She knew the game had changed, and this time I was in control. Her lawyer, Victor Graves, was already sitting across from me, looking every bit the professional he was. He flashed a cold smile as he opened the meeting. "Mr. Matthews, I'm sure you're aware that we're here to discuss a settlement." He was all business, but I could tell he was already sizing me up, trying to figure out how he could win this for Emily. "Settlement?" I repeated, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not here for a settlement, Mr. Graves. I'm here to make sure Emily answers for what she did. A settlement won't fix what she's stolen from me." Victor's expression flickered for just a moment, but he quickly masked it with that professional smile. "I understand your anger, Mr. Matthews, but we have to think about the long-term consequences here. A settlement would avoid the public spectacle of a trial and save both of you from further emotional distress." I leaned forward slightly, my eyes never leaving Emily's face. "You think this is about emotions?" I asked, my voice cold now. "This isn't about emotions, Victor. This is about justice. This is about Emily using my name, robbing me, and thinking she could get away with it. I'm not walking away from this without making sure she faces the consequences." Emily finally spoke, her voice quiet, almost pleading. "Ethan, I never meant for any of this to happen. I made a mistake. I just didn't know what else to do." Her words might have sounded convincing if I hadn't already seen the proof, if I hadn't already seen the emails, the bank statements, and the way she had planned everything with Paul. "A mistake?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "No, Emily. This wasn't a mistake. You forged my name. You stole from me. And you lied to my face. This isn't something you can apologize for. Victor was quick to interrupt, sensing the tension in the room. Mr. Matthews, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We can still reach an agreement, something that works for both parties. But I wasn't interested in negotiating with someone who had tried to destroy me. I looked back at Emily, my gaze unwavering. You can't fix this with a simple apology, Emily. I've seen the lies, the deceit, and the betrayal. And I'm not leaving this room until I make sure you pay for it. Victor saw the determination in my eyes, and for the first time I saw him hesitate. The lawyer who had been so confident at the start was now losing his ground. He turned to Emily, and she was visibly shaken. The walls had come down, and the truth was finally in the open. I want the house, I said firmly. I want the savings and all assets transferred back into my name. And I want compensation for the emotional distress, the damage to my life. You wanted a settlement? This is it. And it's non-negotiable. Emily sat there in stunned silence. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew this was my moment. Ethan, please, don't do this. I'm sorry, she whispered. But I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I was interested in taking back what was mine. I was interested in making sure she would never do this to anyone else. The meeting ended shortly after that. There was no settlement, no compromise. Emily and her lawyer had no choice but to accept my terms. The legal battle was over. I had won. As I walked out of the building that day, I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. The power I had once lost was back in my hands. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. It was over. The legal battle. The lies. The manipulation. Emily had tried to take everything from me, but I wasn't going to let her win. The court ruling had gone in my favor, and I had taken back control of my life, but there was still a part of me that felt empty. It wasn't just about the money or the house or the assets, it was about the emotional toll. The betrayal I had felt ran deeper than I had realized. The hardest part was facing the aftermath. I had won, yes, but winning didn't erase the hurt. It didn't erase the years of trust one had invested, the dreams I had built with someone I thought I knew. The scars from what Emily had done to me weren't something I could just wash away. But I had learned something valuable throughout this ordeal, that my worth wasn't defined by the people who betrayed me. It was defined by how I chose to respond. I spent the next few weeks in a fog, processing everything. The house was officially mine again, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a reminder of what I had lost. So, I started looking for a new place, somewhere fresh, somewhere that didn't have the weight of the past hanging over it. I found a small apartment in a quieter part of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I spent the first week just unpacking and organizing, filling the space with things that felt like me, not the us that Emily and I had built, but the me that had been buried under years of sacrifice and compromise. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I started working on my personal goals again. The business ideas I had shelved, the projects I had put off, the things that had once made me excited, I pulled them out of the drawer and dusted them off. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since my marriage. I poured my energy into creative projects, into building a new future for myself. It wasn't easy. The past still lingered in the corners of my mind, but I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. Days turned into weeks, and as I continued to rebuild, I realized something. I wasn't just getting back to who I was before Emily. I was becoming someone stronger. Someone who could face the challenges of life without fear. Someone who didn't need validation from anyone else. The man I had become wasn't defined by the mistakes of the past, but by my ability to move forward and create a new path. One evening, I was sitting in my new apartment looking out the window at the city lights below when I received a message. It was from Emily. I hadn't heard from her since the court case, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the message. I'm sorry, Ethan, it read. I never meant for things to get this bad. I wish you well. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to respond, to lash out, to make her feel the same pain I had felt. But then I remembered everything I had learned in the past few months. I had already won. I had already rebuilt. I didn't need her apology to heal. I didn't need her approval to move forward. I deleted the message without responding. And in that moment, I realized that the final victory wasn't in the court case or in getting the house back. It was in finding the strength to walk away from the past and embrace the future, no matter what it looked like. I had taken back everything that was mine. And now I was ready to make my future even better. The weeks that followed were filled with small victories. I was finding my rhythm again, building a new life piece by piece. But something was missing. It wasn't just the house or the money that I had reclaimed. It wasn't even about proving Emily wrong anymore. It was about finding peace within myself. I knew I was stronger now, but I also knew I needed something else. I needed to reconnect with life, to find joy again. That's when I met Olivia. I wasn't looking for love. To be honest, after everything that had happened, I didn't think I was ready. But Olivia came into my life like a breath of fresh air. I met her through a mutual friend at a small gathering one evening. She wasn't like anyone I had ever been with. She had this calm, grounded energy that made me feel at ease, something I hadn't felt in years. There was no rush, no pressure. Just two people talking, laughing, and getting to know each other. At first, I was hesitant. I couldn't help but compare her to Emily. It wasn't fair to her, I knew that. But after a few weeks of getting to know each other, I realized that Olivia wasn't a replacement for my past. She wasn't a shadow of my failed marriage. She was her own person, and what I felt with her was different. It wasn't about fixing the past, it was about building something new, something better. We spent more time together, doing simple things, walking in the park, having coffee at a local cafe, talking about our goals, our dreams, our fears. With Olivia, I didn't feel like I was dragging around the weight of the past. I didn't feel like I was in a constant state of recovery. With her, I felt like I could just be myself completely. One evening, as we were sitting on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights twinkling below, she turned to me and asked, "What do you want now, Ethan?" I had never really thought about it like that. The question hit me differently than I expected. I had spent so much time just surviving, just getting through the next day, the next legal battle, the next obstacle. But now I realized that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. I was choosing. I smiled, looking out over the city. "I want to keep moving forward," I said softly. "I want to keep building, keep growing, and keep finding joy in the little things. I want to make the most of every moment." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I meant it. I had reclaimed my life, yes, but now it was about choosing what came next. It was about embracing the change that had been forced upon me and turning it into something beautiful. Olivia smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "Then let's make the most of it together." I had finally found something. It's funny how life can throw curveballs when you least expect it. Just when I thought everything was falling into place, just when I thought I had finally left the past behind, it came knocking at my door again. I was at home one evening, enjoying a quiet night with Olivia. We had made dinner together, and the apartment smelled like garlic and fresh herbs. It was one of those moments that made me feel at peace, as though all the pieces were finally fitting together. I didn't feel the weight of my past. I felt normal. Happy even. That was when the knock came. I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood up, surprised, and walked to the door. When I opened it, there she was, Emily. Standing on my doorstep, looking nothing like the woman I had married and everything like the woman who had broken me. "Ethan, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Her eyes were tired, almost pleading. She wasn't the confident, arrogant woman who had once been so sure of herself. No, now she seemed smaller. Vulnerable, even. Olivia, who had been sitting on the couch, looked up at the door and froze. I could see the tension in her eyes, the uncertainty. She knew who Emily was. She had heard all about her, about the betrayal, the lies. But this was the first time she was seeing her face to face. I stood there, conflicted. A part of me wanted to slam the door in Emily's face. I had finally gotten my life back, and here she was, showing up like nothing had ever happened. But another part of me felt pity. She had hurt me, yes, but in the end, I had already gotten everything I needed. I had learned the lessons I needed to learn. I had moved on. Still, this was a conversation that needed to happen. So, I stepped aside, letting Emily in. Olivia stayed seated, her gaze fixed on me, waiting for some kind of signal. I could feel the tension building, like a storm brewing in the room. Emily sat down at the table, not looking at either of us, her hands twisting in her lap. "I don't know what I'm doing here," she started. I can't keep running from what I did, Ethan. I've ruined everything." I glanced at Olivia. She didn't move, but her face was hard to read. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, my voice steady but with a firmness that didn't leave room for excuses. "I want to make it right," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I know I can't fix what I did, but I need you to know that I regret it. I've been seeing a therapist and I've realized how much I've hurt you, how much I've hurt myself. I just want some kind of closure, some peace." I felt a coldness run through me. A part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted to hear the words that would make everything make sense. But I couldn't forget the months of betrayal, the lies, the way she had stolen my life from me. I couldn't forget the pain she had caused, and I knew that no amount of apology could erase that. "Emily," I said, my voice firm now, "you can't fix this. You can't just show up and expect things to go back to how they were. I've moved on. I've built a new life. And I'm not going to let you take that from me." Her face faltered. For the first time, I saw a real crack in the armor. She had no more excuses, no more justifications. She was broken, but I wasn't the one who had broken. Olivia stood up from the couch, walking over to me, her hand on my shoulder. "Ethan," she said softly, "we don't need to keep dragging this out. You've already moved on. And you deserve better." Emily looked at her, her eyes wide, as if she were just now realizing that she had lost. And in that moment, I knew I had truly won. Not because I had beaten Emily, but because I had beaten the past. I had finally let go. I had moved forward, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even her, drag me back into the darkness. "I'm sorry for everything," Emily said quietly, her voice full of regret. "But I understand if you never want to see me again." Without another word, she stood up and left. As the door closed behind her, I turned to Olivia, who was standing there, watching me. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but also a glimmer of hope. We had made it through the storm, and now it was time to rebuild once again. Olivia smiled, stepping closer to me. "You're free now," she said softly, and for the first time in months, I truly felt it. I was free. The day after Emily left, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't relief, exactly. It wasn't joy. It was something deeper, a quiet understanding that I had finally closed that chapter. The one that had held me captive for far too long. I had been angry, devastated, and broken, but now I was free. As I looked at the apartment around me, the space I had slowly built up into something that felt like home, I realized how far I had come. From the man who was once betrayed, left with nothing, to the person I was now, strong, independent, and ready to embrace whatever came next. Olivia was still in my life, and that was more than I could have asked for. What started as an unexpected connection had grown into something real. But as much as I valued her, I knew I wasn't ready to rush things. I needed to focus on myself first, on continuing to build my future without the weight of the past holding me back. I threw myself into work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I was rediscovering passions I had lost along the way, writing, creating, designing. And as the days turned into weeks, I felt more and more like the person I was meant to be. But with all this rebuilding, something else became clear. It wasn't just the work that made me feel whole. It was the relationships I was fostering. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to open up to people. I began to trust again, not just Olivia, but my friends, my family. The people who had stood by me when everything else had fallen apart. One evening, as Olivia and I were sitting in my apartment, laughing over a homemade dinner, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about the future? About where we go from here?" I paused for a moment, letting her words settle in. The future. It was something I hadn't really thought about before. When I had been married to Emily, I had been living in a constant state of expectation, trying to maintain something that wasn't real. But now I had the freedom to choose. I had the freedom to build something on my terms. "I do," I said slowly, my voice steady. "And it looks better than I ever imagined." Olivia smiled, her eyes soft. "I'm glad. Because whatever that future is, I want to be a part of it." I felt a warmth spread through me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't holding on to the past or the mistakes of others. I wasn't living in fear of what might come next. I was living in the present, embracing the opportunities that lay ahead and finding peace in the fact that I had made it through the hardest part. I looked at her and smiled back. "We'll figure it out. Together." And in that moment, I knew everything was going to be okay. My future wasn't defined by the betrayal of the past. It wasn't defined by the anger or the hurt. It was defined by the choices I made today and by the people who chose to walk beside me. I had learned something invaluable. The road to healing wasn't a straight line. It had its ups and downs, twists and turns. But as long as I kept moving forward, I would continue to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing whatever came next. The future was mine to define. And this time I was ready for it. But now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after everything fell apart? What was the hardest part of your journey? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be just what someone else needs to hear today. We all have a journey, and sometimes sharing it can help others find their way forward. And if the story of overcoming betrayal, rebuilding, and embracing a new future resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the inspiring stories coming your way. Let's keep moving forward together. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for supporting each other. Remember, no matter what life throws your way, you are stronger than you think.